What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan podcast. And today we're here with John Sonmez, and he is the founder and CEO of Bulldog Mindset. This guy really, I heard his interview a couple years ago in a different company that he had owned, and seeing just the change in him, even from in 2 years and coming into just such an incredible business, helping men to really become men, right? Take on the role of a man in their life and he helps them financially, spiritually, sexually, so that they can live just an amazing lifestyle. And I'm really excited to have him in here today to share with us about really some mindset tactics, where most of you come into the show to really learn how to scale or take your business to that next step, and 99% of the time it's because we get stuck at a mental barrier. And I think that's really going to be kind of the core concept of this interview today. So John, say what's up to everybody and let's hop in, man.
Yeah. Hey everyone. Thanks for having me, Josh. I'm excited to get started here.
It's going to be a blast. So, John, I do have my first question for you is like, what was the transition for you? Because you have a pretty unique story, from coder to a guy who's like jacked and has a good mindset. Not that all coders aren't that way, but I'm really curious.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of different periods of transition, right? I think that you always have to be growing in life, and so there's these like periods of time where you're kind of underground and it doesn't feel like anything's happening, and then you kind of reemerge and you come out as a new person if you're nurturing, if you're getting that growth that you need, that in order to do that. And so for me, there was multiple ones of these, everything from when I was really young, being very shy and being this dorky kid that was picked on in high school, and then getting to the gym and starting to lift weights and changing mostly my external, right? I remember having this idea in my head of why not me? And I thought, and that was really powerful. And that sort of helped me through the rest of my life. I didn't have all the changes there. I didn't quite grasp it all, but that one thought of why not me made me realize that if anyone else can do something, then I can do it. It's just a matter of choice. And so I started acting as if I was already the person who I wanted to become. And I started creating this vision in my head of who I wanted to be in the future. And I started pretending like I was already that person. That was one of the key transformations at that point. And a lot of that still, at that early stage was very external in transformation, because even though I had this concept, it was the secret that I unlocked that allowed me to transform myself. But I was doing it for external validation. I was doing it for the approval of my peers. I was doing it to get validation from women at that time. And so it didn't really stick. Right. But the idea stuck. And then later on in life, as that kind of fell apart and I got a job as a software developer, and I was still had a lot of stuff to work on in life. I didn't have any kind of really presence. I was still very shy, still lazy to some degree. And I got to this point where I got out of shape and I kind of ballooned up, and I remember going to the store and buying these size 46 pants. And that was the point where I realized, John, you're fat, and I couldn't deny it. I had realized I had all these justifications in my head, and I kind of had this other really powerful thought, which was that everyone kind of thinks they're going to be a rock star someday. Everyone kind of thinks it's just going to work out. They're going to become rich. They're going to become famous. They're going to get the girls. They're going to get the car, whatever. But you only really have this one life, and if you're not taking steps and action to do that, you're not going to get any of those things. It's not just going to magically happen someday. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And that's where I got back in shape. I completely started changing my mindset, started reading a lot of books on personal development, got introduced to Tony Robbins, and that really changed a lot of my perspectives. Started looking into Stoic philosophy. That changed some perspectives, and I lost all that weight. I got in really good shape, started running marathons, right? Started my businesses at that point too. And it was just so many things that were happening in that same time period. I had retired young. That was my goal. I'd been doing real estate investment, and I actually retired, and I went to Maui to live for 2 months. And just sipping Mai Tais on the beach, and I couldn't stand it. It was the most depressing point in my life ever, having achieved my financial goal. And I realized this really important concept, which was that it's your goals. If your goals are about what you can get or what you get, you will be disappointed. But your goals need to be about who you become. And that was a major shift. And that's really where Bulldog mindset started to come from. I started actually pursuing and running marathons at that point, and really got started looking into masculinity and why it is that certain guys like myself at that point in my life, I didn't feel like a real man. I just didn't feel like, I felt like there was something missing. And there wasn't, we don't have these rites of initiation that we used to have back in the day where men become men. And so I started really researching that, really started trying to go on my own journey. And that was kind of the biggest final transformation that's happened so far, is I came out of that almost a completely different person, right? In the sense, like, if you look at my YouTube videos, like physically I look fairly the same, but my mannerisms, my voice changed. It completely changed on its own. All of these radical transformations happened in my persona. And then that's where kind of Bulldog mindset came from. And I realized that this was something that I needed to teach to other men because it had impacted me so much. So that's kind of the short story of all the transitions and transformations that has brought me up to this point so far.
Well, I love the story because I mean, the reality is, as entrepreneurs, we can relate at many different stages of that journey. I know, even being, I was a scrawny kid as well, and I joined sports and things like that just so that I could stop being known as the twig kid, but it still didn't go away. But things like that were just what I think kind of motivated me to start getting accomplishment and finding accomplishment in other things. And I think, with your story, it's just so unique in the sense that, I mean, you were able to take it, and instead of just giving up on it, that you were able to pursue it, further and kind of push it so much further. And I think the point that was the highlight for me of that entire story is the fact that you hit financial freedom, but you still were like, now what? And a lot of people who are listening to the show are probably sitting in that exact same space, because there's comes a time in your life where you're like, I think I've about got everything that I need. I have quite a few things that I want. I'm pretty good. But then it really has to shift. So I want to really delve heavily into that mindset and into your framework for helping people to change that, because it appears to be a really hard thing to do, but it seems like you've kind of like cracked the code and like how to help people shift that mindset quickly and change their trajectory.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one. And it's one that I've struggled with, like, teaching people for quite some time, because I do believe after everything I've gone through and talked to people and tried to teach this concept, that to some degree you have to experience this on your own, right? I believe that having a good guide to help you along the path, right? So maybe if someone's listening to this podcast and they sort of know, okay, this guy said, and I've heard other people say that when you become financially successful, when you become financially free or whatever it is, or you get all the girl, get the hot girl, or you have that access to that lifestyle that you like, whatever it is, those things that we have that we're like, yeah, if I could just get that, then I would be that. I heard this and this guy said this, and so I'm kind of prepared for what's going to happen, even though I don't believe him, right? Because it's funny. I have one of my YouTube videos, I'd said in there, I was like, oh, I don't want to win the lottery. The lottery would be like, winning the lottery would be one of the worst things that could happen in my life. And I said, really, like, if someone gave me $10 million, I would turn it down. I wouldn't want someone to give me $10 million. And that's why I wouldn't want to win the lottery. And my comment section was full of BS. No, you're full of crap. Or I wouldn't be like that. Like, I don't know what's wrong with you, like, and everyone was kind of saying that, that they would see things differently. And you won't, it will be bad, because one I think really important thing to understand that's just so critical in life is that you you know you you don't you're not going to enjoy what you didn't earn, right? What you don't feel like you, and again, like, if you kind of look at that, it's not that, like, if you're successful financially that you didn't earn it. It's just like this idea that, why is it that I only want what is mine, right? That's one mantra that I have. I only want what is mine. I've only want what I've earned, right? And why is it that that's true? The reason why that's true is because in reality, like, the thing that makes us happy, the thing that makes us fulfilled in life, it's not any of the material things that, getting the money, getting the girls, getting the cars, none of that stuff. It's really, it's putting in the work it's a hard day's work, right? When you really think about when you felt the most not happy but fulfilled, like just that satisfied feeling, like just it's a job well done. That's what it is. And the reason why is because we always want to be growing. We want to be growing as a human being. And so you know so it's really like making that mindset shift to think about, again, like I said, a lot of people are making their goals. They're setting goals on what can I get, right? So when people say, "Oh, my goal is to make $1 million or this year or whatever," I'm like, first of all, it's a bad goal because you don't have direct control over it, right? You can't control if you make $1 million. Like, make a goal that you have direct control over, right? If you said, "I'm going to get on the phone and I'm going to do 20 sales calls every day," that may make you $1 million this year. That's maybe a good plan. That's a goal that you can actually achieve because you have control of it. Like, I don't want to make goals that I don't have control over. And then the second thing that's wrong with that kind of goal is that, again, it's about what you get. So what happens now when you reach that $1 million? Is your life perfect and happy? What's most likely going to happen is that you've built this thing up in your head to such a large degree, and you've made it your purpose and your mission in life. And as soon as you reach it, now it's gone and you've lost everything you've been fighting for in life. It seems like it would be a good thing, but what actually made you happy, what actually made you fulfilled and brought you fulfillment, was actually fighting and shooting towards that goal. And so instead, to have a goal about what you can become is way more important. So for example, last year I set a goal for myself to run to train for a 100-mile race, an ultra marathon. And a lot of people said, "Well, why would you do this, John? This isn't like, what are you going to win this race? You're going to make money from this?" I'm like, "No, I'm 240 pounds. Guys that are running ultras are like 140. There's no way. Like, I can't even be close to fast." Like, "Well, you're trying to lose weight?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. This is not a good way to lose weight. Trust me." Like, running a lot will make you, really hungry. You have to eat a lot to sustain it. They're like, "Well, it's certainly not going to be best for your health." And yeah, you could die doing something like this. It's certainly putting a tax on your system. It's not the most healthy thing. But the reason why I did it was because I wanted to become the guy who did it, because I knew that by setting that goal and going through that process, I would become a different person, and that's the direction I want to go. So I see goals, and I think really the mindset shift here is looking at goals not in terms of destinations that you need to get to in order to get something, but more as directions. I set a goal somewhere in order to move me in a particular direction that I want to grow in life. And if you set goals that way, then two things will happen. One is that when you reach the goal, you won't think it's the end, and you won't feel that sense of depression that we all do when we reach our goals many times. And second, you'll always have another goal, that because if you're trying to go this direction, what the next step is, right? And that progression of steps doesn't seem pointless anymore, because you're actually doing something, you're growing. A lot of people, they get into this point where, like, "Well, I don't know, I guess I should set my goal at this," and they set a goal for another higher thing, and they just do it out of, "I don't know what to do anymore." Whereas if you know that your purpose in setting goals is to grow yourself in certain directions, then it's really easy to set those goals.
Yeah, and I love that because it's about the trajectory, right? It's the direction you're heading instead of, just trying to set the goal. I was actually really intrigued by the fact that, like, hey, like $1 million isn't a good goal. And I'd like to kind of pick that apart because I have kind of been feeling that same way. At the end of the year, I usually take a week or two, and this year it was about 10 days where I just get away. It's me and my wife. We go out and we just have a vacation, and I take the time to set goals for myself and kind of realign my life. And this year I was like, I'd really like to pass the $1 million mark in our company. And it was one of those things where I was sitting there and I'm like, it just feels like a meh goal, just because it's so, I almost want to say like cliche,
Right.
everybody's like, "Oh, I want to pass the $1 million mark," but it is quantifiable, but it actually doesn't really fit into the SMART goals thing. So I want to ask you a little bit about that, of like how you recommend people actually tailor those goals and tweak them so that they become a more successful goal.
Perfect. Yeah. So I hate the way that people set goals today, and the way that every seminar teaches setting goals, because it's absolutely ridiculous. Because setting goals that are things that are beyond your control is asinine. It doesn't make any sense to me at all, right? It's like throwing a dart at the dartboard. Maybe you hit it, maybe you don't hit it. You can do things that are going to move you towards that direction, but it's arbitrary at the end of the day, right? Now you can have a number. So let's take the, I'll give you an example of me setting a goal, because I have a framework for this, right? And so at one point when I was growing my YouTube channel, when I was just starting out, I had maybe like 300 or 400 videos on the channel, and I had, I don't know, like 20,000, 30,000 subscribers or something like that. And I said, I really want to have 100,000 subscribers on my channel, right? And so now that's not a good goal, okay? Because I don't have direct control over getting 100,000. There's nothing I can do that will guarantee I'll get 100,000 subscribers. I can't make it happen. It's someone else's. It's outside of my control. It's results, right? You know, I can't control that thing, right? So what I call that, what most people call goals, I call it an aspiration. So I have an aspiration to get 100,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. So then from there, then I say, okay, from that aspiration, what goal can I set that will give me a 99% chance of achieving the aspiration? And it's a subtle difference here, but the whole idea is that I can't control getting 100,000 subscribers, but there is some goal that I can make that will give me a really high probability of achieving the aspiration. And the rule about the goal is it has to be something I have direct control over, right? So I don't have direct control over people subscribing to my channel. I do have direct control over how many videos I make, if I call people, if I tell people to subscribe to my channel, all those things, right? So what I did is I looked at a bunch of YouTube channels and I said, okay, I don't see anyone who has 2,000 videos on their channel who doesn't have at least 100,000 subscribers. So I said, there's my goal. My goal is to make 2,000 videos on my channel in the next 2 years. And then within those 2 years, I should have 100,000 subscribers. It's 99% chance, because there's no one else on the internet who has done this, who hasn't gotten that aspiration. And so I broke that down. So then my next level after the goal is a process. So it goes aspiration, goal, process, right? And so my process, I said, now what's the process I can use to follow that, or to accomplish that goal that I can do every day or every week that will guarantee that I'll hit the goal? And so it was just simple math at that point, right? I had 500 videos on the channel, so I needed about 1,500 more. I wanted to do this in about roughly 2 years. So I said, okay, if I do 15 videos a week, so if I do 2 videos a day and 3 on Sunday, and I do this for 2 years, then I will hit that goal, guaranteed. There's no question. There's no doubt there. So, and if I hit that goal, 99% chance I'll hit that aspiration. So that's what I did. And it didn't even take half that long. I think I ended up creating it when I created the next 500 videos, probably in 6 months or so, whatever it ended up being, I hit the 100,000 mark and went beyond that. So the whole idea behind this is just that, you know, every single one of those things that we set as a goal, those are just aspirations for the most part, because it is just pointless in my mind to set a goal for something that you do not have direct control over. You don't have direct control over your revenue, but you do have direct control over things that will help you to grow your revenue, or to, you know, and, you know, the same thing with even losing weight, right? People are like, oh, I want to lose 50 pounds. You can't lose 50 pounds. That's unless you chop off your leg, like so it's an aspiration. So then from that aspiration, it's like, okay, if you want to lose 50 pounds, what goal could you create that would 99% guarantee that you're going to lose 50 pounds? Well, you might have to do a little bit of math. You figure out, okay, how many calories, you know, do I burn per day approximately? Okay. And then, you know, how much deficit do I need in order to drop a certain amount of weight? And then you say, okay, well, in order to achieve this, maybe you run the numbers and you say, all I need to do is eat 1,800 calories a day every single day and run 2 miles a day, or do 30 minutes of cardio, whatever it is. And if I do that for 12 weeks, I'll lose 50 pounds, or whatever it ends up being, right? And then now you've got an actual goal that you can achieve, and you've got a process for that now on a daily basis. This is what I do. I eat this, I do that. And so to me, this is the only logical and analytical, like sensical way to do goal setting, because all the ridiculous stuff, and I've been to the seminars where they're like, dream, write on your paper, what color do you want your yacht to be? And it's like, what is your 5-year goal? What is your your 1-year goal? And it's like, think big. And it's a bunch of BS, because you don't have direct control over that stuff. So
see, and I love the way you explain it. That actually resonated with me a lot, just because um I mean, having it as the aspiration and then you have the goal to get to that aspiration, that just makes so much more sense, because you really can't control it. People would argue, oh, you can control that you make $1 million, right? Like, you can absolutely control that, but you cannot control other people and have them give you the money. It's not a 100% guarantee.
right.
But you can 100% guarantee that you're going to make 100 sales calls every single month, right? I
Exactly.
love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah, you can influence it. That's like the aspirations you can influence. Like you can influence that you can make $1 million in a year, but you can't. It's not in your direct power control, right? But there are a lot of things that, for instance, you can even break it down to a product level. I mean, you could say, well, if I make $100 per sale, how many sales do I need to make $1 million? And you still can't guarantee sales, but you can say, okay, well, what are the things that I do that create sales? And you can look at the probability, the statistics of it, and you can say, well, if I have 100 leads, I make $500 worth of sales for every 100 leads that I have. Okay, and now you can start to get to a point where you can finally, you have to trace it all the way down to what is the thing that you control, because you might not even be able to control where they get 100 leads, but maybe it's every podcast episode that you put out, or every YouTube video that you make, or every blog post that you make, right? You get a certain number of leads on average, or traffic or something like that. And so now you can quantify it all the way down to the point where you can set a real goal and say, well, I need to do this. And maybe it's a combination. It might be, if I do 5 YouTube videos a week and 2 blog posts and 3 podcast episodes, then that will be enough that statistically I will have this many customers, and statistically I'll have this much money, and that will lead to that revenue goal. So you're influencing it all along the way, but you're not in control until you hit the point where it's something that basically, the way I define it, as you have direct control over something, it means that you have something that you can do that absolutely guarantees the result. If it's not absolutely, for example, I can control, if my goal is to walk to my door and open it, I have direct control over that. 100% of the time that I attempt it, I will do it. It's within my power. But so many things that are beyond our power that we think are within our power, and we're fooling ourselves.
Yeah, and I think it's really about that brutal honesty of okay, that doesn't mean you have to make small goals. You could say, oh, I'm going to make $100 million in 1 year. Go for it. But you're saying, make sure you've got the action steps to back it up that can feed that goal, that aspiration.
Right.
So, wow. Yeah. Love that idea. So I hope everybody's listening to this, as this is coming out earlier in the year. Everybody's always doing their goals. They're at, what have you. Right. But if you can write it down this way, I think so many more people are going to realize it's not as hard as they think to accomplish their goals. So a question I have for you though, John, sometimes, and money is actually a really good example of this. When somebody says, hey, I want to make $1 million, 99% of the time, they don't know which activities are the ones that are going to be the ones that provide that result in the long run, that they can guarantee are going to provide that result. So how do you help them to navigate that?
So there's 2 things that I would say. So one is what I call my golden rule of business, right? This is it's so simple, which is that the secret to business is find something that works and do it over and over and over again, right? And so when you set a goal like that, like I want to make $1 million, right? The answer is really like, well, is there something that's making you money? Can you just repeat that over and over and over again? I know that sounds really, really simplistic, but that's at the kind of simpler level. But I think the more relevant thing that's going to apply to more people in regards to this is, it's what I call the fog of war, right? So if you've ever played like World of Warcraft, or not World of Warcraft, Warcraft or Starcraft, or one of the, or Age of Empires, any of those games where it's like a combat real time thing, and you've got this this map, and you can't see all of the map, right? You can't see where the enemies are, but as you start to explore the map, then you can see it, like that fog of war disappears, and you can see further out, right? But you can't see, you can only see so far, right? And so, I had this one guy that emailed me for coaching, and he was like, Gary, I want to make $30,000 a month. He's like, Gary Vaynerchuk said that I can make $30,000 a month. And I was like, well, how are you going to do it? He's like, that's why I want to hire you for coaching, is I want you to tell me. And I said, do you see any way for you to do it? Do you have any? He's like, no, I don't. That's what I want you to. I'm like, I can't help you, because I can help you to make $100 a month. And he said, well, I don't want to make $100 a month. I want to make 30,000. I said, okay, how are you going to make $30,000 a month if you can't even see it? Right? You don't even see it. It's not even a possibility in your mind. You have this, right? So the thing is, okay, as far as like getting, let's say we want to get to $1 million a year, you have to start off with something like $100 a month. And from $100 a month, you can look over that hill and you can say, well, if I can make $100 a month, can I see a way to make $1,000 a month? Absolutely. You're 10xing what you're doing to make $100 a month. I can see that, right? And now you're making $1,000 a month. Now, can you look from the top of that hill and see a way to make maybe $10,000 a month? Yeah, because if you can do 1,000, you could do 10,000, right? And then so on. At that $10,000 hill, can you look over that and maybe you won't be able to see $100,000 a month. Maybe that's too big of a leap to go from 10 to 100. But could you see from going from 10 to 50, right? And maybe from 50 to 100, and there you're at your $1 million per year mark. But the key is that, and again, it works with the same thing with the goal setting, is that if you can't see a way to do something, you can't do it. and it's so many people are trying to figure out how they're going to get from A to B, and they can't even see the path. And so it's like, well, maybe you need to, instead of focusing to get to A to B, maybe you need to get to A sub 1 and from A sub 1 go to A sub 2, and then finally at some point you'll be able to see B over there, and it won't be so far, and you're like, oh yeah, if I just build this bridge, I'll get to B. I'm almost already there, right? And so that's kind of how I look at it, is this whole fog of war. It's like, you just don't look so far ahead. Instead, say, okay, what's the next milestone that I can get to that I can see right now? And you can look at your whole business, you can divide it up, and you can say, I had one guy I was coaching, and he had this business where he was creating books and selling them on Kindle. Okay. And he's like, I need your help. I've got 5 books out there, and I'm only making like $1,000 a month. And that's not a business. I want to make a lot more than that. And so I was like, well, okay, well, your books are each making $200 a month. And he said, yeah. And he said, but what do I need to do? I need to obviously start a different kind of business, or I need to do something different because they're only making $200 a month. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, do you not see the answer here? Like, this is, to me, I was like, why don't you just make a whole bunch more books? Like, if you have 5 books and you get $1,000 a month, well, why don't you make 50 books and get 10,000? Just it's that simple. And what I was telling him too is what will happen along that path, right? Because see, that's because he was trying to get too far. He was like, oh, well, how am I going to get to $100,000? I don't know, but there's a clear path to get to $10,000 a month. It was clear. It was very, very clear. Like, if he does that, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to get that result. So get there, and then let's see, where the hill, and what happened when he started doing that was he started producing all these books. He figured out a system he's like, well, I have to produce them a lot faster. So he had to hire some people, and he was starting to put out books like 1 a week instead of 1 a month. He got to that. And then when he got to 50, he didn't make $10,000 a month. He made like $30,000 or $40,000 a month. And the reason why was because there were some outliers in there, right? So, on average, each book was doing $200 a month, but there was one book that was doing $5,000 a month. And that's going to happen when you do something like that. So that's why it's like, you just have to look at, how do I get to the next hill? Because when you get to that next hill, then you can see over that hill, and you can see where the next step is. If you try to, like, if you're just starting out and you're like, oh, I want to have $1 million business. Now, maybe someone who's really experienced as an entrepreneur, who's done this a bunch of times, they can already see that. They can see, oh, I know how to get to $1 million business like that, right? Yeah, there's people like that. But if you're just starting out, you gotta earn your way up, because you can't. It comes down to those limiting beliefs. You can't do what you can't envision, what you can't see. If you can't see it, it's not possible.
See, and I absolutely love that, because and in your context, right? The aspiration can be $1 million business. I'd like to do that in a year's time, but right now I can only see a $1,000 a month, right? I can only see $1,000 a month. Let me run towards that as fast as possible. Hit that. I could see me 10xing that effort and getting to $10,000 a month. I could 10x that to $1 million. Love that. Absolutely love that. I think the number one problem that people have is that they set big goals, but they don't set big plans.
Yes.
And the map isn't there. And I was a gamer a lot growing up, so I understand the fog of war concept.
Okay, good.
And I love that idea because it's like you can't see the path, you can't see the map until that is revealed to you. So I hope everybody while listening to this interview has thought about that heavily, and what if maybe the goals they just set in January need to become aspirations and they need to create real tangible goals moving forward. So two questions for you, John, before we sign off. The first one is, where can people connect with you and the Bulldog Mindset?
Yeah. So best place is just go to bulldogmindset.com. There'll be a little pop-up to ask you if you want to take the Bulldog quiz to get your Bulldog score. Of course you do, because you want to know what your score is. So just go in there, 10 questions, take the quiz, and I'll send you some information in order to raise your Bulldog score, which is basically a reflection of your mental toughness and grit. That's what it really comes down to. So bulldogmindset.com, go check it out.
Absolutely love that. So make sure you go check that out, bulldogmindset.com. We'll link that in the show notes as well. And my final question for you, John, is, we've covered a lot of different topics. So what is the one takeaway you would hope that our audience would take away from this interview, if you could leave them just one final parting piece of guidance?
Yeah, I would say that kind of the overarching thing that we talked about is just this idea of 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 trusting the process, right? Because that's what this comes down to is, and this has been kind of my guiding light in life, is you have to learn in life to divorce the process from the results, because you're not in control of the results. In fact, in this crazy world that we're living in right now, it's really important to understand there's a lot of stuff in this world right now that you're not in control of. And worrying about stuff, I mean, this goes right back to Stephen Covey, right? 7 Habits of Effective People, where he talks about your sphere of influences. And we've seemed to have forgotten this really key fundamental concept that he said about not about worrying about your own sphere of influence, right? That's the key. It's like, and so stop trying to control results, right? I learned this lesson from playing poker. You don't have direct control. You have direct control over playing the best that you can with the hand that you have in the exact circumstance that you have. So you have to be focused on that. And in fact, there's this really great meme where it has Jason Phelps, or not Michael Phelps, right? I always mix him up, the swimmer, right? Okay, and he's like he's swimming and he's looking at forward at the end of the lane, and the guy that's behind him, the second place guy, is looking at him, right? And it says something like, winners focus on their goals, and losers focus on winners, right? And the way that I interpret that is a little bit differently. I look at it as he's just focused on doing what he needs to do. He's trusting the process. I'm swimming as fast as I can. I don't care where I am. I don't care where the other people are. I'm just doing what I need to do. The results will come or they won't come. Right. And that's what you have to do here. And that's the key. So when we're talking about setting goals and making them achievable, things that you have direct control over, in all of that, and when we're talking about happiness and setting goals that are goals of who you become, it all comes down to this whole idea, which was expressed thousands of years ago in the Bhagavad Gita, which is that you are entitled to your labor, but not the fruits of your labor. and it was such great wisdom, because what it just basically means, that it means focus on trusting the process. Don't worry about the results. The results come or they don't, but your job is just to do what you can do.